now on to my favourite part of the show, my one-to-one discussion with Masooma Jaffer. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
A big question I had to ask you, something that's been in the news, gender identity. How do we as Muslims get our heads around this, and does it impact our lives, and how do we kind of make peace with it? For example, there's so many categories now I can't personally keep up, but what does Islam say about this?
This is actually not a new issue within Islam. There's actually a ruling that Imam Ali alayhi salam gave at his time when he was asked about a child that had been born neither male nor female. So it's not something that is, you know, new within Islam, that we do have rulings from the Aima. When there's actually a physical gender issue where it's, you know, the child is neither one or the other, then obviously the parents and the doctors will sit and decide where to go from there. The problem arises when the child is born of one sex and feels that they are another sex. Usually, I think when children are young, they're not aware of male and female. They're just children, and you know, if a child wants to, you know, if a girl wants to be a tomboy or a boy wants to do, you know, certain, like, play with dolls and things, I don't think it's something that the parents should worry about at a young age. I think, again, culturally, we're very much, boys have to be boys, girls have to be girls, and, you know, but children are children.
Right.
So there, you know, Islam doesn't, if you can, if there are tests done, psychological tests and things like that, where you honestly believe that you are in the wrong body, Islam doesn't have a problem for you to have that operation done.
Well, could you explain that? How the concept of how can you be in the wrong body? Why would God create? How does Islamically? How can we? I just find that a bit.
I think a lot of it's to do with hormones as well, the hormone levels and things. I mean, when my son was young, he went through a phase where he refused to drink the water from the tap because he said that they'd done some sort of something in science where the teacher was saying because most women are on the pill and they're taking, you know, lots of estrogen and progesterone and so forth. God. And then obviously when they're going to the bathroom, it's all coming out and the water's, you know, cleaned up and refined and everything. And then, but those hormones are still in there. And he was like, oh my God, if I drink the water, I'm going to become a cow.
Right.
So, you know, the thing, I think as science has advanced, we are seeing lots of side effects to that as well. I mean, like, you know, with every pill that you take, there are side effects. So, yes, you know, with the advancement of science, we're you know, living longer, we're able to do so much more, but there's always side effects to that. And, you know, I mean, I don't know, I haven't researched into this, but I think, you know, maybe it's something that we've done or we're doing is maybe causing that hormone imbalance within.
So just to get this right in my own head, you're saying that Islam does cover issues such as if you feel that you're born in the wrong body and there's things that you could do for that. I want to go back to what if you have children that don't necessarily fit a gender role, like we said, tomboys and stuff, but supposing there's a child that I know that he wanted to wear female clothes and he wanted to wear nail varnish. He was about 7 or 8 years old at the time. And it was a phase that he went through for 2 years and the parents felt very uncomfortable with that, but that's what he felt he wanted to do. How do we deal with situations like that?
I think if he's, again, it's from an Islamic perspective, it is not encouraged to
not just go through with it and just get it out his system if he feels that he needs
to. Because
or in public even.
I think Islam is about prevention rather than cure, sort of thing. So if you're sort of going to bring confusion within the child's mind, then that would be discouraged. When they're very, very young and they're playing with dolls, or that's not a big deal. But as they get older, then, you know, for them to actually dress up in girls' clothes would not be encouraged at all. I think what is not allowed in Islam is to cross-dress. So, you know, you have to decide what gender you are and then stick with that gender and then live according to the rules of that gender. And obviously it's not just your decision, you have to go through the psychological assessments and so forth as well. It's not just one day I wake up and I say, okay, now I want to be a male, because life's just easier for men than it is for women. It doesn't work like that.
So how do we as a Muslim community deal with the pressures that this now brings? For example, we have the transgender community, and there's a push for there to be, say, unisex bathrooms, etc. How do we kind of keep up with all of this without, of course, oppressing anybody, but also keeping to our value system? How do we...
As with everything else that happens within the West, which Islam doesn't agree with, we have to actually explain to our children that these are God's laws. This is what God has said, with His wisdom. Obviously, we're very limited in what we can understand and see. And if you truly believe that there is a God and He is the all-wise, and He's created you and He wants the best for you, then why would you not follow His laws? But at the same time, do not be disrespectful, because your akhlaq is important as a Muslim. But we need to ensure that our children know that they cannot cross certain boundaries.
Okay, talking about crossing boundaries, in life you're faced with so many things. Supposing your child has a friend who is identifies with a particular group, or for example, I don't know, LBGTZ or whatever it is. There's so many letters, but anyway. For example, I was in a situation where at work, a colleague of mine is transgendered and wanted to get married, and they hadn't gone through the full operation yet. So when I politely declined, saying that I obviously respect you and stuff, but I just don't feel that it's appropriate for me to, because of what I'm representing physically and emotionally, and that caused a lot of problems. And we are faced with issues like that. How would you have approached that situation, and friendship groups, etc. How do we?
Again, I think it's the same sort of principle in, when we encourage our children to make friends with people who are, certain, like, for example, if you know a child is, a troublemaker, you would try to keep your child away from that, to making friends with that child. If you know a child has, as they grow older, drug problems or alcohol problems, things like that, you would tell your child, I don't want you to be friends with them, because you know that that's going to affect your child to a certain extent. You wouldn't, you would say, look, I don't have a problem with you interacting with this child and trying to guide them and trying to help them and be there for them, but you cannot be close friends with them, because you've got to realize that with friendship also comes advice, comes, some sort of, we tend to mirror our friends, and we tend to sort of take the advice from our friends, and all of these things are very dangerous. But can we not
just put that to one side, as in who they are is who they are, and not kind of, that's their decision, not ours. Agreed. But we can still have
a relationship, in like they're your colleagues, they're your peers, they're your classmates, but to be close to someone and to have a close friendship with someone, I think who they are plays a huge part of that, because you're not friends with you're friends with that whole person, with everything that they stand for and everything that they value as well.
But what if you've grown up with that person and you've known that person for a long time, or even a family member? What do you do then?
Again, it's the same sort of principle.
You can't, family ties, we can't really break. How is that going to?
Okay, so you would keep, family relationships as much as is possible, but that you wouldn't be so close to that person that that person can affect you, or you wouldn't go to that person for advice, because you know that their moral stance, their values are totally different to yours.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that, because it's a tricky one.
Yes.
And then, do you think that, is there a place for these type of people? Because I don't, sorry, I use the term these type of people. I'm just trying to think of what I would say. There's a growing phenomena, well, I don't know if it's growing, it's always been there, but there's lots of Muslim groups now who are in subcategories, whatever they want to label themselves with. How do we come to terms with that? Do we acknowledge that this happens in the Muslim community? Is it their problem, not our kind of problem?
I have a problem with a Muslim calling himself or herself a Muslim and then openly claiming to be something that God has said that you cannot be. So, you can't match the two together. And I feel when you do that, it is my duty to say, no, that is wrong. I'm not judging you as a person. What I'm saying is you can't be a Muslim and be this as well, because God has said you can't. I remember actually listening to this this priest on the radio when they were talking about homosexuality. And he was saying that, because his relationship with God was so strong as he was growing up and he had these homosexual feelings, he never actually acted on them because he knew that that was against what God's wishes were. But he used to pray to God to give him the strength not to act on them. And he felt that those prayers helped him. And then he said, he was actually saying as he grew older, he got to a stage where he wanted a relationship, but he only found the same sex appealing. And again, he prayed to God to give him, some sort of guidance, something where he felt. And he said he met a wonderful woman who he became very, very close friends with. And he says, yes, he doesn't have the same sort of sexual desires towards her as he would maybe to the same sex, but he felt he could have a life with her, and she's his best friend, and they got married and they had children, and she knows exactly how he feels. But at the same time, she knows that he would never act on those because of his love for God and because of his understanding of God, and because he knows that this is something that God has, told him not to do. And I thought it was so beautifully put that, and it's the same, I suppose, I'm not saying that the feelings aren't there, I'm not saying that, but, if you know that God has said this is wrong, then you would try your most not to do it. You wouldn't sit there and say, well, I don't care what God said, this is what I am, and I'm still claiming to be a Muslim. It doesn't make sense.
SubhanAllah, so much to think about there. There's a lot. I mean, we're coming to terms with a lot of the things that are coming up in society as well. I hope you've enjoyed this segment as much as I have. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.